The coffee shop on Fifth Avenue had become Maya Rodriguez's sanctuary, a quiet corner where she could fade into the background, sip her vanilla latte, and pretend, just for an hour, that she was like everyone else. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished concrete floors. She sat in her usual spot, back to the wall, eyes on the entrance. Old habits die hard. Maya was 28 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and eyes that held depths most people couldn't fathom. She wore civilian clothes now, jeans, a gray hoodie, running shoes. On her shoulder, barely visible beneath the fabric, was a small patch she'd sewn on herself. It wasn't flashy. Most people wouldn't even notice it. But to those who knew, it meant everything. She'd been back stateside for 3 months now, trying to adjust to a world that felt simultaneously too loud and too quiet. The transition from active duty to civilian life was harder than any mission she'd ever run. At least in the field, she knew the rules. Here, everything felt uncertain, unmoored. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Maya looked up to see a woman in her 50s, silver hair perfectly styled, designer handbag hanging from her wrist. Maya shook her head and gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Thank you, dear. It's absolutely packed in here today." The woman settled into her seat, pulling out her phone and a small tablet. "I swear, this neighborhood gets busier every week." Maya offered a polite smile and returned to her book, a worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. She'd read it cover to cover at least a dozen times, first during her initial training, then again during the long, sleepless nights overseas. The words had kept her grounded when nothing else could. "Oh my goodness, is that a military patch?" Maya's eyes snapped up. The woman was leaning forward, squinting at Maya's shoulder where the hoodie had shifted slightly, revealing more of the patch. "Yes, ma'am," Maya said quietly. "How adorable. Did you buy that at one of those army surplus stores?" "My nephew loves those places. They have the most authentic-looking gear." The words hung in the air for a moment. Maya felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. "No, ma'am. I served." "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." The woman's expression shifted, not to respect or understanding, but to barely concealed skepticism. She looked Maya up and down, taking in her slight frame, her feminine features, her youth. "You served. In what capacity, sweetheart? Administrative work? Nursing?" Maya had encountered this before. She'd known she would. The disbelief, the casual dismissal, the assumption that women in the military only filled support roles. She'd prepared herself for it, told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't need validation from strangers. But something about this moment, maybe it was the condescension in the word, sweetheart, or maybe it was the 3 months of isolation and frustration finally reaching a breaking point, made her response sharper than she intended. "Special operations," Maya said. The woman actually laughed. It wasn't cruel, exactly, but it was dismissive, the kind of laugh you give a child who's told you an elaborate fantasy. "Special operations? Really? Aren't there, physical requirements for that sort of thing?" Maya's hands tightened around her coffee cup. She could feel the familiar surge of adrenaline, the same sensation she'd felt before every mission, every jump, every moment when her life hung in the balance. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was a coffee shop in Manhattan, and this woman wasn't an enemy combatant, just an ignorant civilian who'd watched too many action movies and made assumptions about what a warrior looked like. "There are very strict requirements," Maya said, her voice controlled. "I met all of them." "I'm sure you did, dear." The woman's tone was placating now, the way you'd speak to someone you thought was delusional. "But special operations? That's Navy SEALs, Green Berets, that sort of thing. Elite units. Men's units. Not anymore." The woman's smile became strained. She glanced around the coffee shop, perhaps looking for support, or maybe just checking if anyone was witnessing this uncomfortable conversation. When she looked back at Maya, her expression had hardened. Listen, I appreciate your service, I really do. My father was in the army. But there's no need to embellish. There's nothing wrong with having served in a support capacity. It's honorable work. You don't need to make up stories about being in special forces to feel important. Maya felt something crack inside her chest. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was deeper than that, a profound exhaustion with having to justify herself, with having to prove her worth to people who'd never walked a mile in her boots, who'd never felt the weight of a rifle in their hands or the responsibility of lives depending on their decisions. She stood slowly, gathering her book and her coffee. You're right, she said, her voice hollow. There's no need to embellish. As she turned to leave, the woman reached out and grabbed her arm. Before Maya could react, the woman's fingers found the patch on her shoulder and yanked. The sound of fabric tearing echoed in Maya's ears like a gunshot. Time seemed to slow. Maya watched, almost detached, as the patch came away in the woman's hand, the small piece of fabric that represented 5 years of her life, of sacrifice and blood and lost friends, of becoming someone she'd never imagined she could be. The woman held it up triumphantly, as if she'd just exposed a fraud. I knew it, she said, loud enough that heads turned throughout the coffee shop. These stolen valor people are everywhere. Buying military patches, pretending to be heroes. It's disgusting. Maya's training kicked in. She could feel her heart rate slowing, her breathing becoming measured and controlled. This was a situation that required de-escalation, not confrontation. She was a professional. She'd handled hostile insurgents with more grace than this. Ma'am, Maya said, her voice quiet but firm, I'm going to need you to return that patch to me. So you can keep lying to people? I don't think so. The woman turned to the crowd that had gathered. This girl is impersonating a service member. She's probably collecting donations, scamming people. Someone should call the police. A barista approached cautiously. Is there a problem here? Yes, there's a problem, the woman said. This young woman is wearing fake military insignia and claiming to be special forces. It's stolen valor, and it's illegal. Maya felt the eyes of everyone in the shop on her. She recognized the looks, skepticism, curiosity, judgment. Some people seemed sympathetic, but most appeared to believe the woman. After all, Maya didn't look like what they expected a special operations soldier to look like. She was 5'6", 135 pounds, with a face that belonged on a college campus, not a battlefield. I can provide identification, Maya said calmly. My military ID is in my wallet. Oh, I'm sure you have a fake ID too, the woman scoffed. These stolen valor people are sophisticated. A man in a business suit stepped forward. I actually know something about this, he said. My brother's a Marine. Women aren't allowed in special operations. It's a fact. So she's definitely lying. Maya closed her eyes briefly. The man was wrong, policies had changed, barriers had fallen, but explaining that felt like shouting into the void. These people had already made up their minds based on her appearance, her gender, her youth. The policy changed, Maya said. Women have been serving in special operations roles for several years now. In what capacity, the businessmen pressed. Support roles, maybe. Translators. Intelligence. But not as operators. Not in combat. Maya could feel the old scars on her body, the one on her left shoulder from shrapnel, the one on her ribs from a knife that had come too close, the constellation of smaller marks that mapped out 5 years of war. She could feel them all, invisible under her clothing, proof that no one in this room would believe. I need to go, Maya said, reaching for the patch in the woman's hand. The woman pulled it away. No. I'm keeping this as evidence. And I'm reporting you. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of Maya. Smile for the camera, faker. Something shifted in Maya's expression, not anger, but a cold, hard resolve. She'd spent years of her life being underestimated, and she'd learned to use it as an advantage. Let them think she was weak. Let them think she was a liar. She knew the truth, and soon, they would too. Keep it, Maya said quietly. Consider it a souvenir. She turned and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving her coffee behind, leaving the murmuring crowd behind, leaving the woman holding her patch like a trophy. The morning air hit her face, cold and sharp, and she pulled out her phone. The call was answered on the second ring. Commander Rodriguez. The voice was professional, familiar. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, her former teammate. Chen, it's Maya. I need a favor. There was a pause. Are you okay? You sound. I'm fine. I need you to pull some strings. Get clearance for something. What kind of something? Maya looked back at the coffee shop, at the faces pressed against the windows, still watching her. The kind that reminds people why they should think twice before making assumptions. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then, what happened? Stolen valor accusation. Woman ripped my patch off in front of a crowd. Called me a fake. Jesus, Maya. I'm sorry. You want me to? I want full authorization to wear my dress uniform. The real one. Everything. Another pause, longer this time. Maya, you know that's not standard protocol for inactive personnel. There are regulations. I know the regulations. I also know there are exceptions for public relations purposes, for recruitment events, for educational demonstrations. Make it happen, Chen. Call it whatever you need to call it. She could hear Chen typing. Where are you planning to go? Back to that coffee shop. Tomorrow morning. Same time. And you want to walk in wearing full SEAL combat dress? Maya, that's going to cause a scene. That's the idea. More typing. Then Chen's voice came back, lower, more serious. You know this could backfire. It could draw unwanted attention. Media attention. Good, Maya said. Maybe it's time people knew. Knew what? That we exist. That we've always existed. That we're not going anywhere. Chen sighed. Give me 2 hours. I'll have the authorization sent to your email. But Maya? Be careful. The brass won't appreciate this if it blows up in the wrong way. The brass can handle it. Will you be there? Tomorrow morning? At some random coffee shop in Manhattan? For a chance to see you put some civilian in their place? Chen laughed. Wouldn't miss it. I'll bring Martinez and Thompson too. Thanks, Chen. Hey, Maya. For what it's worth, I'm proud to have served with you. Don't let anyone make you question that. Maya ended the call and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, people flowing around her like water around a stone. She thought about tomorrow, about the look on that woman's face, about the statement she was about to make. But more than that, she thought about every woman who'd come before her, who'd fought for the right to serve, to compete, to prove themselves in arenas that had been closed to them. She thought about the young girls who might be watching tomorrow, who might see what she was about to do and realize that their dreams weren't impossible. She wasn't doing this for revenge. She was doing it for them. Maya spent the rest of the day in her small apartment in Brooklyn, preparing. Not physically, her body was always ready, always maintained at peak condition out of habit more than necessity, but mentally. She knew that what she was planning would have consequences beyond tomorrow morning's confrontation. Her apartment was sparse, functional. A mattress on the floor, a small table, 2 chairs. No pictures on the walls, no personal touches. It looked like a place someone was ready to leave at a moment's notice, and in many ways, it was. She hadn't fully committed to civilian life yet. Part of her was still waiting for the call to come back, even though she knew it wouldn't. Her last mission had ended that possibility. She thought about that mission now, as she often did in quiet moments. Afghanistan, 18 months ago. A high-value target extraction that had gone sideways when their intelligence proved faulty. She could still feel the weight of Lieutenant Marcus Webb in her arms as she'd carried him 3 miles through hostile territory, his blood soaking through both their uniforms. He'd made it, barely. But the doctors had told her that 15 more minutes and he wouldn't have. The Medal of Honor citation sat in a box in her closet, still in its presentation case. She'd never displayed it, never told anyone about it except the people who'd been required to know. To her, it wasn't an achievement, it was a reminder of the cost, of the friends who hadn't made it home, of the weight that came with survival. Her phone buzzed. An email from Chen with the authorization attached, along with a text, "It's done. Command approved it as a recruitment awareness initiative. You're clear to wear full dress uniform with all insignia and decorations. Try not to make the Navy look bad." Maya smiled slightly. No promises. She pulled a large black case from her closet, the kind that looked like it might hold expensive camera equipment but was actually custom fitted for her gear. Inside, wrapped in protective cloth, was her combat uniform. She hadn't worn it since her discharge ceremony, hadn't even looked at it. But now she lifted it carefully, feeling the familiar weight of the fabric. The Naval Special Warfare insignia, the SEAL Trident, gleamed even in the dim light of her apartment. She remembered the day she'd earned it, the culmination of some of the hardest months of her life. The bell had been right there during training, the easy way out, the option to quit that hundreds of men had taken. But she hadn't rung it. Not once. Not even when every muscle in her body was screaming, when hypothermia had set in during Hell Week, when instructors had told her she didn't belong. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Beside the trident were her other decorations. The Medal of Honor, yes, but also the Bronze Star with Valor, the Purple Heart, the Combat Action Ribbon. Each one represented a story, a moment when she'd been tested and hadn't broken. She laid the uniform out on her bed and sat beside it, running her fingers over the patches and insignia. Tomorrow, she would put this on not for a ceremony or a formal occasion, but to make a statement. To answer a question that shouldn't have needed answering: did women belong in special operations? Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's number. Mija, her mother's voice came through, warm and concerned. "I had this feeling I should call you. Is everything okay?" Maya smiled. Her mother had always had a sixth sense for when something was happening in Maya's life. "I'm fine, Mama. Just dealing with something." "What kind of something?" "You know, you can tell me." Maya hesitated. Her mother had never fully understood her career choice, had spent years terrified every time Maya deployed, had only started sleeping through the night again after Maya's discharge. How could she explain what had happened today, what she was planning tomorrow? "Someone questioned my service today," Maya said finally. "Said I was lying about being in the military." There was a sharp intake of breath. What? Who would say such a thing? A woman at a coffee shop. She saw my patch and assumed I'd bought it at a surplus store. When I told her I'd served, she didn't believe me. She ripped the patch off my uniform. She put her hands on you?" Her mother's voice rose. "Maya, did you call the police?" "No, Mama. It's not worth it. But I am going to do something about it." "What are you going to do?" Maya looked at the uniform laid out on her bed. "I'm going to remind her, and everyone else who was there, exactly who I am and what I've done." Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, "Be careful, Mija. Sometimes when we stand up for ourselves, the world pushes back twice as hard." "I know. But I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing it for every woman who's ever been told she doesn't belong, that she's not strong enough, that she's not good enough. You were always the brave one. Even as a little girl. Remember when those boys said girls couldn't play baseball? You made the team and struck out their best hitter." Maya laughed. "I remember." He cried. "You made your point. Just like you'll make your point tomorrow. But Maya, don't forget to be kind. Even to people who don't deserve it. That's what separates the warriors from the bullies. After they hung up, Maya thought about her mother's words. Kindness. It hadn't been high on her priority list when she'd made the plan. But her mother was right, this wasn't about humiliating someone. It was about education, about opening eyes, about changing minds. She spent the evening cleaning and pressing her uniform until every crease was perfect, every button gleamed. She polished her boots until she could see her reflection in them. She checked and double-checked every insignia, making sure everything was regulation perfect. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. She set her alarm for 0500, early enough to run through her morning routine, to center herself, to prepare for what was coming. As she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she thought about all the moments that had led her here. The day she'd decided to enlist, against her family's wishes. The day she'd learned that women were being allowed into combat roles, into special operations. The day she'd submitted her application to SEAL training, knowing the odds were against her. The day she'd graduated, one of the first women to earn the trident. The day she'd proven herself in combat, over and over, until even the doubters on her team had become her strongest advocates. And she thought about tomorrow, about the woman who'd ripped her patch off, who'd called her a liar, who'd humiliated her in front of a crowd of strangers. She wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. Determined. Tomorrow, she would walk into that coffee shop, and the world would see what a female Navy SEAL looked like. Not because she needed validation, but because the next generation of warriors deserved to know it was possible. Maya woke at 0458, 2 minutes before her alarm. Old habits. Her body had learned years ago to anticipate wake-up calls, to pull itself from sleep at precisely the right moment. She lay still for a few seconds, running through a mental checklist, the same way she had before every mission. Objective, clear. Gear, ready. Mental state, focused. She rose and moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. 5-mile run through the pre-dawn streets of Brooklyn, her breath misting in the cold October air. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 50 pull-ups on the bar she'd installed in her doorway. Shower, cold at the end to sharpen her senses. Black coffee, 2 eggs, whole wheat toast. Fuel for the body, nothing more. By 0700, she stood in front of her mirror in full naval special warfare dress uniform. The transformation was striking, even to her own eyes. Gone was the civilian in the hoodie and jeans, the woman people could dismiss or overlook. In her place stood a Navy SEAL, every inch of her uniform speaking to years of service, sacrifice, and achievement. The Navy working uniform Type 3, the green and tan camouflage pattern, was crisp and perfect. The SEAL trident on her chest caught the morning light, the eagle clutching a trident, pistol, and anchor unmistakable. Above her left pocket, her name tape, Rodriguez. Above her right, U.S. Navy. But it was the ribbon rack above her left pocket that told the Real story. At the top, the light blue ribbon with 13 white stars, the Medal of Honor. Below it, row after row of colored ribbons representing her other decorations. The Bronze Star with Valor device. The Purple Heart. The Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat V. The Combat Action Ribbon. Each one a chapter in a story most people would never know. On her right shoulder, the patch that mattered most, the Naval Special Warfare insignia, identical to the one that had been torn from her hoodie yesterday. But this one was authorized, official, undeniable. She pinned on her garrison cap, adjusting it to the precise angle required by regulations. Then she attached one final item, her military ID card, to a lanyard around her neck, positioned so it would be immediately visible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chen, "We're in position." Thompson brought his dress blues too. Martinez is in civilian clothes but brought his ID. "We've got your 6. Maya smiled. Her team. Even now, even after discharge, they had her back. She took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was someone she'd spent 5 years becoming, strong, capable, proven. Not because she needed to prove anything to herself, but because she'd needed to prove it to a world that didn't want to believe women could do what she'd done. The walk to the coffee shop took 15 minutes. Maya was aware of the look she received on the street. A woman in full military uniform was uncommon enough, but one wearing naval special warfare insignia with a Medal of Honor was nearly unheard of. People moved aside as she passed, some nodding respectfully, others staring openly. A homeless veteran in a tattered Marine Corps jacket straightened as she approached, his hand moving in an automatic salute before he caught himself. Maya stopped and rendered a crisp salute in return. "Semper Fi, sir," she said. The man's eyes widened as he took in her uniform, her decorations. You're a SEAL." "I was. Medically discharged last year." He looked at her ribbon rack, his gaze stopping on the Medal of Honor. His own hand moved to his chest unconsciously, perhaps remembering his own service, his own decorations. "Thank you for your service, ma'am. And thank you for showing these young folks what courage looks like." "The honor was mine, sir." As she walked away, Maya felt a weight settling on her shoulders, not the weight of the uniform or the decorations, but the weight of representation. That Marine had seen her and understood that the world was changing, that the definition of warrior was expanding. That mattered. The coffee shop came into view. Through the large windows, she could see it was crowded again, the usual Sunday morning rush. She spotted Chen immediately, seated near the window in civilian clothes but with military bearing that couldn't be hidden. Across the room, she saw Thompson in his service dress blues, the Navy's formal uniform. He was hard to miss, 6'3", broad-shouldered, his own ribbon rack impressive though not as extensive as hers. And there, at a table near the center of the room, was the woman from yesterday. Same designer handbag, same perfectly styled hair, same air of entitled confidence. Maya took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The effect was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Every eye in the room turned toward her. Maya walked with measured steps toward the counter, her boots clicking on the hard floor. She was aware of the whispers starting, the phones being pulled out, the cameras beginning to record. In the age of social media, nothing stayed private. That was part of the plan. "Good morning," she said to the young barista behind the counter, the same one who'd witnessed yesterday's confrontation. "Vanilla latte, please." "For here." The barista, a kid who couldn't have been more than 20, stared at her uniform, his mouth slightly open. Are you?" "Yes," Maya said simply. "The Medal of Honor," he whispered. "I've never seen one in real life. Most people haven't. It's not given lightly." The barista's hands shook slightly as he made her latte. "It's on the house, ma'am. And thank you. For your service." Maya pulled out her wallet anyway, placing a $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change. But I appreciate the gesture." She took her coffee and turned to face the room. The woman from yesterday had gone pale, her eyes wide with recognition and growing horror. Maya walked slowly toward her table. The coffee shop had gone absolutely silent. It was as if someone had pressed a pause button on the entire room. Maya could feel dozens of eyes tracking her movement, could see phones held up recording, could sense the collective held breath of everyone present. The woman sat frozen, her coffee cup trembling in her hand. Maya stopped at her table, standing at parade rest, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind her back. A position of readiness, but not aggression. "Good morning," Maya said, her voice calm and professional. "I believe we met yesterday." The woman's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her face had gone from pale to red, a flush of embarrassment or anger or both creeping up her neck. "You may not remember," Maya continued, "but you took something from me. A patch. You said it was fake, that I was committing stolen valor." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I thought I should come back and provide some clarification." I didn't," the woman stammered. Maya held up a hand. "Please. Let me finish." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small leather case, placing it on the table between them. She flipped it open to reveal her military ID card. My name is Commander Maya Rodriguez, United States Navy, retired. Service number 6847392. I served for 7 years total, 2 in conventional Navy roles, 5 in naval special warfare. She pointed to the SEAL trident on her chest. This insignia represents completion of basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, one of the most rigorous military training programs in the world. The attrition rate is typically 70 to 80%. I graduated in the top 10% of my class. The woman stared at the ID, then at Maya's uniform, then back at the ID. But you're a woman. Yes. I noticed. Maya's voice held the slightest edge now. Women have been serving in combat roles since 2013, when the ban was lifted. Women have been in naval special warfare in various capacities for even longer. And since 2016, all combat positions, including SEAL teams, have been open to women who can meet the standards. She pointed to her ribbon rack. This is the Medal of Honor, awarded for actions in Afghanistan in 2023. This is the Bronze Star with Valor, also from Afghanistan. The Purple Heart represents wounds received in combat. Would you like me to continue? The woman shook her head mutely, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Maya's expression softened slightly. This wasn't about cruelty. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, don't forget to be kind. That's what separates warriors from bullies. I didn't come here to humiliate you, Maya said, lowering her voice so only those nearby could hear. I came here to educate. Not just you, but everyone who witnessed what happened yesterday, and everyone who will see the videos that are undoubtedly being recorded right now. She gestured to the room, where at least a dozen phones were pointed in their direction. The assumptions you made yesterday are the same assumptions that have been made about women in the military for decades. That we're not strong enough. That we're not tough enough. That we belong in support roles, not combat roles. That our service is somehow less valuable, less real, than that of our male counterparts. Maya pulled out a chair and sat down, her posture still perfect, her bearing still commanding. Do you know how many women have died in service to this country since 9/11? Over 180. Do you know how many have been wounded? Over 1,000. They served as pilots, medics, military police, intelligence officers, and yes, in special operations. The woman wiped her eyes. I didn't know. I just thought. You thought you knew what a warrior looks like. What a SEAL looks like. And I didn't fit that image. Maya nodded. I understand. I've spent my entire career fighting that assumption. From instructors who thought I couldn't hack it. From teammates who doubted me until I proved myself. From enemy combatants who underestimated me right up until the moment they realized their mistake. She leaned forward slightly. But here's what I need you to understand. Every time someone like you makes those assumptions, every time someone dismisses a female service member's contributions, you're not just insulting that individual. You're sending a message to every young girl who might be considering military service. You're telling her that no matter what she achieves, no matter how hard she works, people will still question whether she belongs. Thompson appeared at Maya's shoulder, his large frame creating an imposing presence. But when he spoke, his voice was gentle. Commander Rodriguez saved my life, he said. 18 months ago, in the Helmand province. Our unit was ambushed. I took shrapnel to the leg and couldn't walk. She carried me, all 220 pounds of me, 3 miles through hostile territory to the extraction point. Under fire. She didn't leave me behind, even when staying meant putting her own life at risk. Chen stepped forward from across the room. She led our team through some of the most dangerous operations of the Afghan conflict. She was calm under pressure, brilliant in her tactical thinking, and absolutely fearless when it mattered. Gender didn't make her a liability. It made her underestimated by our enemies, which she used to our advantage. The woman looked around the coffee shop, seeing other people nodding, seeing the respect in the eyes of those who understood what they were hearing. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I shouldn't have. Maya reached across the table and placed her hand over the woman's. I accept your apology. But more importantly, I need you to learn from this. When you see someone in uniform, don't assume you know their story. When you see someone who doesn't fit your preconceived notion of what a service member should look like, question your assumptions, not their service. The woman nodded, tears flowing freely now. She reached into her designer handbag with shaking hands and pulled out the patch, Maya's patch, the one she'd torn away yesterday. It was wrinkled now, one corner slightly frayed from being carried in the bag. I kept it, she said, her voice breaking. I was going to turn it in as evidence. I was so sure I was right, so certain that I was doing the right thing by exposing you. She held it out to Maya. Please. I'm so deeply sorry. Maya took the patch, running her thumb over the familiar fabric. It was just a piece of cloth, really, but it represented so much more. She looked at it for a long moment, then made a decision. Keep it, she said, pressing it back into the woman's hand. What? No, I couldn't possibly. Keep it, Maya repeated. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder to think before you judge. To question your assumptions. To recognize that strength comes in many forms, and heroism doesn't have a single face. The woman clutched the patch to her chest, sobbing openly now. Around them, the coffee shop had erupted in applause. It started with one person, then spread like wildfire until the entire room was clapping, some people standing, others wiping their own eyes. Maya stood and turned to address the crowd. I want to say something to everyone here, and to everyone who will watch the videos of this encounter online. She waited for the applause to die down. This isn't just about me, or about this one incident. This is about changing the narrative around who gets to be called a warrior. She pointed to a young girl, maybe 10 or 11, who was sitting with her parents near the window. You. What's your name? The girl's eyes went wide. Sarah, she said softly. Sarah, do you think girls can be soldiers? I don't know. The TV shows are always about boys. Maya walked over to her table and knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the child. Girls can be soldiers. Girls can be pilots, engineers, special operators, astronauts, anything they want to be if they're willing to work hard enough. The only limits are the ones we accept. She unpinned one of her patches, a naval special warfare insignia, identical to the one on her shoulder, and held it out to the girl. This is for you. Not to wear, because you haven't earned it yet. But to remind you that someday, if you want it badly enough, you can. The girl took the patch with reverent hands, her eyes shining. Really? Really? But I have to warn you, it won't be easy. People will doubt you. They'll tell you that you're not strong enough, not tough enough, that you don't belong. You'll have to work twice as hard to prove yourself half as much. But if you decide that's what you want, don't let anyone stop you. Not even yourself. Sarah's mother had tears in her eyes. Thank you, she mouthed to Maya. Maya stood and addressed the room again. I want to be clear about something. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm not asking for the standards to be lowered. Every woman who serves in special operations has met the same standards as the men. We've passed the same tests, completed the same training, performed the same missions. We've earned our place. A man in the back raised his hand tentatively. Can I ask a question? Of course. I'm a veteran. Army Infantry, Iraq 2005. And I'll be honest, I had my doubts about women in combat roles. I thought it would hurt unit cohesion, create distractions. But I want to understand. How do you respond to those concerns? Maya nodded, appreciating the honest question. Those are legitimate concerns, and they were part of the debate for years. The answer is that the concerns were based on assumptions, not evidence. Studies have shown that well-trained, professional soldiers can work together effectively regardless of gender. Unit cohesion comes from trust, from knowing that the person next to you is competent and committed. Gender doesn't determine that, character and capability do. Thompson spoke up again. I'll add to that. When Commander Rodriguez joined our team, yeah, there was some skepticism. Some guys weren't sure how it would work. But on our first mission together, she proved herself. After that, we didn't think of her as the woman on the team. She was just Rodriguez, one of our best operators. Chin stepped forward. I'm a woman, and I served in naval intelligence before cross-training to special operations support. The military is changing, and that's a good thing. We're tapping into talent we used to ignore. We're building teams based on capability, not outdated ideas about who can do what. The Army veteran nodded slowly. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your service, ma'am. All of you. Maya felt a shift in the room, not just acceptance, but understanding. This was why she'd come back. Not for revenge, not to humiliate anyone, but to open a door in people's minds, to challenge assumptions, to show rather than tell. A young man in a college sweatshirt stood up. I'm planning to enlist after graduation, he said. This might sound stupid, but, seeing you, hearing your story, it makes me want to work harder. If you can meet those standards despite everyone doubting you, then I have no excuse not to give everything I've got. Maya smiled. That's not stupid at all. That's exactly the right attitude. The military doesn't need people who think it will be easy. It needs people who know it will be hard and are willing to do it anyway. The woman who'd started all of this stood up, shakier now, but with determination in her eyes. I want to apologize publicly, she said, her voice carrying across the room. Yesterday, I made assumptions based on ignorance and prejudice. I humiliated someone who deserved respect, who had earned respect through service and sacrifice I can't even imagine. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. She turned to Maya. Is there anything I can do to make this right? Maya thought for a moment. Yes, actually. There are organizations that support female veterans, that help them transition to civilian life, that provide resources for those struggling with PTSD or physical wounds or the challenges of reintegration. Grace After Fire, the Service Women's Action Network, Final Salute. Pick one and make a donation. Not because you owe me, but because there are women out there who served this country and now need help. The woman pulled out her phone immediately. I'll do more than donate. I'll volunteer. I'll learn. I'll do better. That's all any of us can do, Maya said. Acknowledge our mistakes and commit to doing better. The energy in the coffee shop had completely transformed. What had been a space of confrontation and tension just minutes before had become something else entirely, a gathering place for understanding, for education, for connection across the military-civilian divide. Maya found herself surrounded by people with questions, with stories, with gratitude. A middle-aged man wanted to shake her hand and tell her about his daughter who was considering the Naval Academy. A woman in nurse's scrubs thanked her for her service and shared that her sister had been a military medic in Iraq. A teenager asked if he could take a photo with her for his history project on modern military heroes. Through it all, Maya remained patient, gracious, and mindful of the platform she'd unexpectedly created. Each interaction was an opportunity, not to glorify herself, but to reshape perceptions, to humanize the idea of women in combat, to make the abstract concrete. Thompson and Chen stayed close, not as bodyguards but as witnesses, as corroborators of her story. Occasionally they'd add their own perspectives, their own experiences serving alongside women in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. The thing people don't understand, Thompson was saying to a cluster of college students, is that in modern warfare, there are no safe zones. No rear areas where combat doesn't happen. When we were in Afghanistan, our female intelligence officers, our female medics, our female logistics specialists, they all came under fire. They all fought back. The idea that women weren't in combat was always a fiction. We were just pretending they weren't. One of the students, a young woman with bright pink hair, raised her hand. So why did it take so long to officially open combat roles to women? Maya fielded this one. Because institutions change slowly, especially ones as traditional as the military. There were genuine concerns about physical standards, about unit cohesion, about the effectiveness of integrated units. But there were also cultural barriers, assumptions that had been in place for generations. Change required evidence, data, and most importantly, women who were willing to be the first, to endure the extra scrutiny, to prove what was possible. Were you one of the first? The student asked. I was part of the early waves, yes. Not the very first. I stand on the shoulders of the women who came before me, who fought legal battles and policy battles so that I'd have the opportunity. But I was among the first group of women to complete SEAL training after the roles were fully opened. What was that like? Maya paused, remembering. The memories were still vivid, the cold of the Pacific Ocean during Hell Week, the weight of the log during physical training, the constant voice in her head telling her to quit, to ring the bell, to make the pain stop. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, she said honestly. Not just physically, though that was brutal. But psychologically. I knew that if I failed, people wouldn't just say, Maya Rodriguez wasn't cut out for this. They'd say, women aren't cut out for this. That weight, representing not just myself but all women who might come after me, that was almost harder than the training itself. Chen nodded. I felt that too, in my own pipeline. Every mistake felt magnified. Every success felt like it needed to be twice as impressive to count. It's exhausting, being a trailblazer. So why do it? Another student asked. Why not just pick an easier path? Maya smiled. Because easy paths don't lead to the places worth going. And because someone has to be first. If we all waited for someone else to break down the barriers, nothing would ever change. The conversation continued, branching into questions about training, about deployment experiences, about the differences between special operations and conventional military service. Maya found herself telling stories she hadn't shared in years, carefully edited to remove classified details, but still powerful in their essence. She told them about her first mission, about the terror and exhilaration of boarding a hostile vessel in the dark of night. She told them about the bond between team members, about trust so deep that you'd put your life in someone else's hands without hesitation. She told them about the weight of taking a life, about the moral complexity of warfare, about coming home and trying to reconcile the person you'd become with the person you'd been. People think special operations is all about being physically elite, Maya said. And yes, you have to be in incredible shape. But the real test is mental. It's about staying calm when everything is chaos. It's about making life or death decisions in split seconds. It's about carrying the weight of those decisions for the rest of your life. An older veteran, wearing a Vietnam-era army jacket, had been listening quietly from a nearby table. Now he stood and approached. Young lady, he said, his voice gruff with emotion, I served in an era when women weren't allowed anywhere near combat. I'm ashamed to say I thought that was right, that it was for their own protection. But listening to you, seeing what you've accomplished, you've changed my mind. You've earned my respect, and more than that, you've taught this old soldier something new. He extended his hand, and Maya shook it firmly. Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. My granddaughter, he continued, she's 17. Wants to join the Marines. I've been trying to talk her out of it, telling her it's too dangerous, too hard. But I see now that I was really telling her she wasn't capable. I'm going to call her today and tell her I was wrong. If she wants to serve, I'll support her. Maya felt her throat tighten. This was why she'd come back. Not for vindication, not for revenge, but for moments like this. For minds changing, for barriers falling, for futures opening up. The woman who'd started all of this, Maya still didn't know her name, approached hesitantly. She'd been sitting quietly at her table, watching everything unfold. Now she held out her phone. I've made donations to all 3 organizations you mentioned, she said. But I want to do more. I work in marketing, and I have some connections in media. Would you be willing to tell your story more publicly? Not for fame, but for education. So that what happened yesterday never happens to another service member. Maya considered this carefully. She'd avoided publicity throughout her career, had actively shied away from the spotlight even after receiving the Medal of Honor. But maybe that had been a mistake. Maybe silence, in the face of ignorance, was its own form of failure. On one condition, Maya said. It's not just my story. It's the story of every woman who's served, who's fighting to serve, who will serve in the future. If we do this, we do it right. We include other voices, other perspectives. We make it about the movement, not the individual. The woman nodded eagerly. Absolutely. I'll set up meetings with producers I know, people who do serious journalism, not sensationalism. This story deserves to be told with respect and depth. As the morning wore on, the crowd in the coffee shop gradually thinned, but the conversations continued. Maya found herself sitting at a large table that had been pushed together from several smaller ones, surrounded by a diverse group, veterans and civilians, young and old, people whose only connection was that they'd witnessed something extraordinary and wanted to be part of the dialogue it had sparked. A young barista brought over a fresh pot of coffee and a plate of pastries. On the house, she said. For everyone. What's happening here today, it feels important. Like history or something. Maya smiled at her. What's your name? Jessica. Jess. Are you in school, Jess? Yeah, community college. Studying to be a paramedic. That's excellent work. We need good medics. Maya paused. You know, some of the best combat medics I served with were women. They had this combination of technical skill and calm under pressure that saved countless lives. If you ever consider military medicine, you'd be following in some impressive footsteps. Jess's eyes lit up. I never thought about that. Military medicine. That could be really good. Travel, experience, training. And the GI Bill to finish your education afterward, Chin added. That's how I paid for my master's degree. As Jess returned to work, clearly thinking about new possibilities, an older woman who'd been quiet until now spoke up. She had the bearing of someone used to authority, and when she introduced herself, Maya understood why. I'm Dr. Patricia Morrison, she said. I'm a professor of military history at Columbia. I've been sitting here listening, and I have to say, what you've done today is remarkable. Not just the personal courage to come back and face someone who wronged you, but the grace with which you've handled it. You've turned a moment of conflict into a teaching opportunity. I had good teachers, Maya said. Both in the military and before. My mother always said that anger without purpose is just noise. If I was going to be angry about what happened yesterday, I needed to channel it into something productive. Dr. Morrison nodded approvingly. I'd like to invite you to speak at the university. We have a course on women in military history, and my students would benefit enormously from hearing your first-hand perspective. We study the pioneers, the WASPs in World War II, the nurses in Vietnam, the first women at the service academies. But you represent the current chapter of that story, the realization of what those pioneers fought for. I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach history, Maya said. You're not teaching history. You're living it. There's a difference. Dr. Morrison pulled out a business card. Think about it. We could do a panel, you and other female veterans from different eras, different branches. Show the continuum, the progress, but also the ongoing challenges. Maya took the card, feeling the weight of yet another opportunity to make a difference beyond her own experience. I'll think about it. And I'll talk to some of the women I served with. If we do this, it should be comprehensive. A man in his 30s, who'd introduced himself earlier as a journalist, had been taking notes throughout the morning. Now he looked up from his laptop. Commander Rodriguez, I have to ask, and please feel free to tell me if this is too personal, but what was it like when you earned the Medal of Honor? What were the circumstances? Maya's expression grew serious. This was the one part of her story she rarely discussed, not out of modesty but because the memories were still raw, still painful. The Medal of Honor isn't something you earn for yourself, she said slowly. It's something you receive because of circumstances that usually involve watching people you care about in danger, making split-second decisions that you'll question for the rest of your life, and somehow surviving when others don't. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Thompson reached over and squeezed her shoulder. He'd been there, he knew. We were on a mission in Afghanistan, Maya continued. Intelligence gathering, supposedly low risk. But intelligence was wrong. We walked into an ambush. Heavy fire from 3 sides. We had wounded, including Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Thompson's predecessor as our team leader. He couldn't walk, couldn't move. The extraction point was 3 miles away through hostile territory. She could see it in her mind, the chaos, the smoke, the sound of bullets hitting stone and dirt around them. I made a decision. I couldn't carry our wounded and provide effective covering fire, so I loaded Webb on my back and started moving. The rest of the team provided suppression fire, but we were outnumbered. I ran that 3 miles with 220 pounds on my back, stopping periodically to return fire, to clear corners, to navigate through a town where every window could hide a sniper. The coffee shop was absolutely silent now. Even the espresso machine had been turned off so as not to interrupt. By the time we reached the extraction point, Webb had lost a lot of blood. The medic said later that if I'd been 5 minutes slower, he wouldn't have made it. But here's the thing, I wasn't thinking about medals or recognition or proving anything about women in combat. I was thinking about getting my teammate home to his wife and kids. That's all. But you were hit, Thompson said quietly. Tell them about that. Maya shook her head. That's not important. It is important, Thompson insisted. He turned to the group. She took shrapnel in her shoulder. She was bleeding the entire 3 miles. She didn't mention it, didn't slow down, didn't stop to treat herself until Webb was on the helicopter and safe. It was minor, Maya said dismissively. It required surgery, Thompson countered. 23 stitches. You still can't fully rotate that shoulder. Maya met his eyes, and there was something there, a shared understanding of what that day had meant, of what they'd all lost and all survived. The point, Maya said, turning back to the group, is that heroism isn't about being fearless or superhuman. It's about doing what needs to be done despite the fear, despite the cost. Every person who's ever received the Medal of Honor will tell you the same thing. We were just doing our jobs, taking care of our people. The real heroes are often the ones who didn't make it home. The weight of those words settled over the room. Maya could see people processing, understanding that military service wasn't just about adventure or patriotism or proving oneself. It was about sacrifice, sometimes the ultimate sacrifice. Dr. Morrison broke the silence. That's exactly the perspective my students need to hear. The reality of service, not the Hollywood version. The moral complexity, the human cost, the reasons people serve despite knowing those costs. A young man who'd been quiet throughout the morning finally spoke up. He had the nervous energy of someone working up courage to ask a difficult question. Commander Rodriguez, I'm transgender, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I want to serve, but with all the policy changes, the debates about transgender service members, I don't know if there's a place for me. Did you ever feel like you didn't belong? How did you push through that? Maya's expression softened. She recognized the vulnerability in that question, the courage it took to ask it in a room full of strangers. Yes, she said simply. I felt like I didn't belong every single day of my first year in special operations. I was constantly aware that I was different, that people were watching me differently, judging me differently. Every mistake I made felt like it reflected on all women. Every success felt like it had to be twice as impressive to count. She leaned forward, making sure she had his full attention. But here's what I learned, belonging isn't something that's given to you. It's something you earn through competence, through reliability, through proving that you're someone your teammates can count on. And more importantly, it's something you claim for yourself. You belong anywhere you're qualified to be and willing to work to stay. But the policies, he started. Policies change, Maya interrupted gently. They change because people challenge them, because people prove they're unjust or unnecessary. 20 years ago, women couldn't serve in combat. 10 years ago, openly gay service members could be discharged. These things changed because people refused to accept limits that weren't based on capability. Chen spoke up. I served with transgender team members. Some of the most dedicated, skilled operators I knew. When you're in the field, when rounds are coming down range, nobody cares about gender identity. They care about whether you can do your job, whether you have their back, whether you're going to get them home alive. The young man's eyes were bright with tears, but he was smiling. Thank you. I needed to hear that. What's your name? Maya asked. Alex. Alex, if you decide to serve, you're going to face challenges. Some people won't understand, won't accept you. But find your allies, find the leaders who care more about capability than politics, and prove yourself through excellence. That's the path forward. An older woman across the table cleared her throat. I have to say something, she announced. I'm a military spouse. I mean. My husband served 3 tours in Iraq. And I'll be honest, I had my doubts about women in combat roles. I thought it would distract from the mission, create problems. But hearing all of this today, I realize my doubts were based on ignorance, on assumptions I'd never questioned. She looked directly at Maya. My husband came home different after his last tour. Quieter, more distant. He wouldn't talk about what he'd seen, what he'd done. Eventually we divorced, not because I didn't love him, but because the man who came home wasn't the man I'd married. War had changed him in ways I couldn't reach. Maya nodded, understanding where this was going. What I'm trying to say, the woman continued, is that war changes everyone it touches. Male or female, it doesn't discriminate. So if we're going to send people into harm's way, we should send our best, regardless of gender. Anything else is just wasting talent and putting lives at risk unnecessarily. That's exactly right, Maya said. War doesn't care about your gender, your race, your background. It only cares about your ability to perform under pressure, to make critical decisions, to function as part of a team. The military is finally catching up to that reality. The journalist looked up from his notes again. Commander, you've talked about the challenges, the discrimination, the doubt you faced. But you've also made it clear that you don't regret your service. Why? What made it worth it? Maya thought about this carefully. It was a question she'd asked herself many times, especially during the hard days of transition back to civilian life. Purpose, she said finally. When I put on that uniform, I was part of something bigger than myself. I was protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, defending values I believed in, working alongside some of the finest people I've ever known. Yes, there were costs. Yes, there were sacrifices. But the alternative, living a life without that sense of purpose, without testing myself against the hardest challenges, without knowing that I made a difference, that would have been a greater loss. She looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each person there. I'm not saying everyone should join the military. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. But I am saying that everyone should find their purpose, their mission, whatever that looks like. Find the thing that scares you and calls to you in equal measure, and pursue it with everything you have. Thompson stood up, checking his watch. Commander, we should probably start wrapping up. You've got that call with the VA counselor at 1400. Maya nodded, though part of her was reluctant to leave. This impromptu gathering had become something special, a genuine exchange of ideas and experiences that bridged the military-civilian divide in ways that formal programs often fail to do. As people began gathering their things, preparing to leave, the woman who'd started everything, Maya had learned her name was Margaret, approached one more time. She held the patch Maya had given her carefully, as if it were made of glass. I've been thinking about what you said, Margaret began. About this being a reminder. I want to do more than just remember. I want to actively work to change the narrative, to educate others the way I've been educated today. She pulled out her phone and showed Maya a website. This is my company's platform. We do digital marketing, social media campaigns, content creation. I want to use it to highlight female veterans, to tell their stories, to challenge the stereotypes. Would you be willing to help? Not as the face of it, I understand if you want privacy, but as an advisor, maybe connecting me with women who are willing to share their experiences? Maya studied the website, impressed by its professional design and clear mission statement. This could actually work, she said. But it needs to be done right. It can't be exploitative or sensationalistic. These are real people with real experiences, not props for marketing campaigns. I understand completely, Margaret said. That's why I need guidance from people like you. People who've lived it, who understand the nuances and the sensitivities. Maya pulled out her own phone. Let me give you some contacts. Women I served with who might be interested. But approach them respectfully, make it clear what you're trying to do, and let them maintain control over their own narratives. These are their stories to tell, not yours to appropriate. Absolutely. Thank you. For everything. For forgiving me, for educating me, for giving me a chance to turn something shameful into something meaningful. As Margaret walked away, Chen sidled up to Maya. You handled that well, she said. Could have destroyed her, but you built her up instead. Very officer-like of you. Maya laughed. My mother would be proud. She always said that strength without compassion is just brutality. Wise woman, your mother. She had to be. Raising a daughter who wanted to be a warrior in a world that told her she couldn't be? That required wisdom and patience I'm still trying to learn. The coffee shop owner, a middle-aged man who'd been watching everything from behind the counter, approached them. Commander Rodriguez? I just wanted to say thank you for what you did here today. This is more than a coffee shop to me, it's a community space. And what happened here this morning, the conversations, the connections, the learning, that's what this place is supposed to be about. He gestured around the room. You're welcome here anytime. Coffee's on the house for you and your teammates. It's the least I can do. Maya shook his hand. That's very generous, but not necessary. Maybe not necessary, but it's happening anyway. Consider it a standing order. As the coffee shop finally began to return to normal, or at least, a new version of normal informed by everything that had happened, Maya, Chen, and Thompson found themselves alone at the table, the last of their impromptu gathering having dispersed. That was something, Thompson said, shaking his head. When you called yesterday and said you had a plan, I didn't expect this. Neither did I, Maya admitted. I thought I'd come in, make my point, and leave. I didn't expect it to turn into a 3-hour symposium on women in the military. You started something here, Chen said. Those college students are going to go back and tell their classmates. That journalist is going to write his story. Dr. Morrison is going to invite you to speak at Columbia. Margaret is going to build her campaign. And all those videos people took. They're probably going viral as we speak. Maya groaned. That's what I was afraid of. Don't be. This is good. The military needs this. The country needs this. We need people to understand that the face of service is changing, that the definition of warrior is expanding. You're part of making that happen. Thompson nodded. And more importantly, you're showing young women, like that girl Sarah, the one you gave your patch to, that they can aspire to anything. That there are no limits except the ones they accept. Maya thought about Sarah, about her wide eyes and reverent hands as she'd accepted the patch. She thought about Alex, the transgender young man looking for hope that there was a place for him in service. She thought about all the people who'd listened today, who'd learned, who'd changed their minds. You know what the hardest part is? Maya said quietly. It's knowing that for every person who learned something today, there are thousands who still believe the old lies. Who still think women can't cut it, that we're a liability, that we're lowering standards. One coffee shop conversation doesn't change a culture. No, Chen agreed. But it's a start. And starts matter. Someone had to be first through the door. Someone had to stand up and say, I belong here. That was you. That's always been you. Maya stood up, smoothing down her uniform one last time. Well, I guess if I'm going to be a symbol of something, I'd better make sure I'm living up to it. Which means I should probably get to that VA appointment. Some things are more important than speeches and symbols, like making sure veterans get the support they need. As they walked toward the exit, Jess, the young barista, called out. Commander Rodriguez? I looked it up. The military paramedic program. I'm going to talk to a recruiter this week. Maya smiled broadly. That's excellent, Jess. But do your research first. Make sure you understand what you're getting into. Talk to veterans who've done that job. And if you decide it's right for you, give it everything you've got. I will. Thank you. For showing me it was possible. Outside, the autumn sun was bright, the air crisp and clean. Maya took a deep breath, feeling lighter than she had in months. The weight she'd been carrying since yesterday, the anger, the humiliation, the sense of injustice, had lifted, replaced by something else. Hope, maybe. Or purpose renewed. You want to grab lunch before your appointment? Thompson asked. There's a great burger place around the corner. Burgers sound perfect. But first, Maya pulled out her phone and called her mother. Mija? How did it go? It went well, Mama. Really well. You were right about kindness. About being strong without being cruel. I'm always right. When will you learn this? Her mother's voice was warm with affection and pride. Tell me everything. As Maya walked down the Manhattan street, flanked by her teammates, recounting the morning's events to her mother, she realized something important. Yesterday, someone had tried to take her identity from her, to strip away her accomplishments, to deny her place in the warrior class. Today, she'd reclaimed it. Not just for herself, but for everyone who'd come before her and everyone who would come after. And tomorrow? Tomorrow she'd keep fighting. Not with weapons or force, but with presence, with truth, with the quiet, steady insistence that all women who chose this path, belonged. The war for recognition, for equality, for respect wasn't won in a single battle. But today, in a coffee shop in Manhattan, she'd won a significant victory. And she was just getting started. 3 weeks later, Maya stood backstage at Columbia University's Miller Theater, listening to the murmur of the crowd gathering in the auditorium. Dr. Morrison had moved quickly, faster than Maya had expected, to organize the panel discussion on women in military service. What had started as a simple idea had grown into something much larger. The panel included 6 women representing different eras and branches of service, a 92-year-old former WASP who'd ferried bombers during World War II, a Vietnam-era Army nurse, a Gulf War pilot, a Marine who'd served in Iraq, Chen representing naval intelligence, and Maya herself. Together, they represented nearly 80 years of women breaking barriers in the U.S. military. Nervous? Chen asked, coming up beside her. Surprisingly, no, Maya said. I've faced down armed insurgents. A college auditorium doesn't seem that intimidating in comparison. Different kind of battlefield though. These kids are going to ask hard questions. Good. They should. We're not here to make it sound easy or glamorous. We're here to tell the truth. Dr. Morrison appeared, clipboard in hand. We're at capacity, 850 people in the auditorium, and we've had to turn away at least 200 more. We're live streaming it though, so the reach will be even broader. She paused, looking at Maya with something like awe. You know, when I started teaching military history 20 years ago, a panel like this would have been impossible. The diversity of experience, the range of roles, it's remarkable how much has changed. And how much hasn't, Maya added. That's part of what we need to talk about tonight. The lights in the auditorium dimmed, and Dr. Morrison took the stage to introduce the panel. Maya watched from the wings as the 6 women filed out to their seats, each representing not just themselves but thousands of others who'd served, who'd sacrificed, who'd persevered against odds that should have been impossible. The WASP veteran, Eleanor, used a walker but moved with dignity and purpose. The Vietnam nurse, Patricia, wore her original uniform, preserved carefully for 50 years. The Gulf War pilot, Sandra, had her flight wings pinned prominently on her blazer. The Marine, Keisha, bore visible scars from an IED blast. Chen wore her service ribbons. And Maya, after some consideration, had chosen to wear her dress uniform again, not to intimidate, but to make visible what was often invisible. Dr. Morrison's introduction was brief but powerful. She spoke about the evolution of women's roles in the military, about the barriers that had fallen and those that remained, about the importance of hearing directly from those who'd lived this history. These women, Dr. Morrison said, gesturing to the panel, represent courage in its many forms. Courage to challenge systems that said they didn't belong. Courage to excel in environments designed to exclude them. Courage to persist when every odd was stacked against them. And courage to be here tonight, to share their stories, to educate the next generation. The applause was thunderous. Maya felt a swell of emotion, not for herself, but for these women beside her, for what they represented collectively. The questions started immediately. A young woman in the front row stood, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone. I want to ask all of you, what was the moment you decided that military service was what you wanted to do, despite knowing the obstacles you'd face? Eleanor, the WASP veteran, answered first. Her voice was thin with age but strong with conviction. I was 20 years old when Pearl Harbor was attacked. I knew how to fly, my father had taught me, and I knew they needed pilots. When I learned about the WASPs, about the chance to serve, I didn't think about obstacles. I thought about duty. About doing my part. Patricia, the Vietnam nurse, leaned forward. I became a nurse because I wanted to help people. When the war started, I knew that's where I was needed most. The army told me I'd be safe, that I'd be far from combat. They lied, of course. We were rocketed, mortared, we treated boys dying in our arms. But I don't regret it. I saved lives. That was worth everything. Sandra, the pilot, smiled wryly. I wanted to fly fast jets. It was that simple. When they told me women couldn't be fighter pilots, I said, watch me. It took years, policy changes, lawsuits by women braver than me. But eventually, I got my shot. And I proved I could do it. Keisha, the Marine, touched the scar on her face unconsciously. I joined because I came from a neighborhood where kids didn't have a lot of options. The Marines offered me a chance to be something more, to prove I was more than my circumstances. I knew it would be hard. I wanted it to be hard. Easy doesn't change you. Chen spoke next. I joined for education benefits, honestly. I was a first-generation college student, and I needed the GI Bill. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that. It became about excellence, about pushing boundaries, about showing what was possible. Maya took a breath before answering. I joined because I needed to know what I was capable of. I grew up being told there were things girls couldn't do, places girls couldn't go. I wanted to test those limits, to see if they were real or just stories we told ourselves. Turns out, most of them were just stories. The questions continued, each one probing deeper into their experiences. How did you handle discrimination? What was your lowest moment? Your highest? How did you maintain your identity as a woman in such male-dominated environments? Did you have to become one of the guys to succeed? That last question sparked a particularly passionate response from Keisha. Hell no, I didn't become one of the guys, she said, her voice fierce. I became one of the Marines. Gender wasn't the defining characteristic, competence was. I could shoot straight, I could carry my weight, I could complete the mission. That's what mattered. I didn't have to give up being a woman to be a warrior. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. But you had to be better than the men, didn't you? A male student asked. To prove yourself? In the beginning, yes, Maya admitted. There was definitely a higher standard, an extra layer of scrutiny. But here's the thing, that made us sharper, more disciplined, more focused. We couldn't afford to be average. We had to be excellent. And in the end, that benefited everyone. It raised the bar for the entire unit. Eleanor raised a shaky hand. Can I say something? I've lived 92 years. I've seen this country go to war 6 times. I've watched women fight for the right to vote, to work, to serve, to lead. And I've learned something important: progress is never linear. We take steps forward, then steps back. Rights we thought were secured get challenged. Barriers we thought were broken get rebuilt. She looked out at the audience, her gaze sharp despite her age. So my advice to you young people: don't take anything for granted. The opportunities these young women have today, she gestured to Maya and the others, they exist because people fought for them. And they'll only continue to exist if you keep fighting. Vigilance is the price of equality. The auditorium was silent, absorbing the weight of those words. A young man stood, his voice tentative. I'm planning to enlist in the army. Infantry. And I'll be honest, some of the guys I know, they're worried about women in combat units. They think it'll be a distraction, that it'll hurt effectiveness. How do I respond to that? Thompson, who'd been sitting in the audience, stood up. May I? He called out. Dr. Morrison nodded, and Thompson made his way to the stage, standing beside Maya's chair. I'm Master Chief Petty Officer James Thompson, U.S. Navy retired. I served with Commander Rodriguez for 3 years. And I can tell you definitively that your friend's concerns are based on assumptions, not experience. He turned to face the audience fully. When Maya joined our team, yeah, some guys were skeptical. Worried about the same things your friends are worried about. But on our first op together, she proved herself. By our second op, we trusted her completely. By our third, we'd forget she was any different from the rest of us until someone from outside our unit would make some dumb comment. He paused, his expression serious. She saved my life. Carried me 3 miles through hostile territory when I couldn't walk. You think I care about her gender? I care that she's one of the finest operators I've ever served with. Tell your friends that unit cohesion comes from trust and competence, not from everyone having the same chromosomes. The applause that followed was deafening. Thompson gave Maya a small nod and returned to his seat. The next question came from a young woman who identified herself as a freshman in the ROTC program. I want to serve. I want to be an officer. But I'm scared. Scared of failing, scared of not being strong enough, scared of proving the skeptics right. How did you deal with that fear? Patricia, the Vietnam nurse, answered this one. Honey, everyone is scared. The men are just better at hiding it, or they've been taught it's not okay to show it. I was terrified my entire first year in Vietnam. Terrified I'd make a mistake, that someone would die because I wasn't good enough, fast enough, smart enough. So what did you do? The student asked. I prepared. I trained. I studied. I practiced until my hands could do the work even when my mind was frozen with fear. And I leaned on the women around me, because there were other women, other nurses, who understood what I was going through in ways the men couldn't. Chin added, and you accept that you will fail sometimes. You will make mistakes. The key is to learn from them, to not let them define you, to get back up and keep going. Resilience isn't about never falling down. It's about getting up every single time. Maya looked at the young woman, seeing herself at that age, full of dreams and doubts in equal measure. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I was your age: your fear is valid. The obstacles are real. The discrimination exists. You will face people who don't believe in you, who don't want you to succeed, who will actively work against you. All of that is true. She paused, making sure she had the students' full attention. But it's also true that you're capable of more than you think. That the standards, while high, are achievable. That there are allies and mentors who will support you. That the satisfaction of proving yourself in the most demanding environments is worth the struggle. Don't let fear stop you. Let it motivate you. The questions continued for another hour, ranging from the practical, how do you handle field hygiene during deployment, to the philosophical, Does military service make you more or less feminine? Each question was answered honestly, sometimes with humor, sometimes with raw emotion, always with the kind of authenticity that could only come from lived experience. As the formal panel wound down, Dr. Morrison opened it up for final comments from each panelist. Eleanor spoke about hope, how she'd never imagined, ferrying planes in 1944, that women would one day fly combat missions, command ships, lead special operations teams. If I could see what's possible now, what seemed impossible then, imagine what will be possible in another 80 years. Don't limit your dreams to what exists today. Dream bigger. Patricia talked about the cost of service, about the friends she'd lost, the trauma she'd carried, the ways war changes you irrevocably. But even knowing the cost, I'd do it again. Service gave my life meaning, purpose, direction. It connected me to something larger than myself. That's a rare and precious thing. Sandra emphasized the importance of excellence. Don't just meet the standards, exceed them. Not because you have to prove yourself, but because the mission demands it. Lives depend on your expertise, your judgment, your skill. Gender is irrelevant when rounds are coming down range. Keisha spoke about sisterhood, about the bonds formed between women in the military. We look out for each other. We mentor each other. We lift each other up. Because we know how hard it is, what it costs, what it takes. Find your tribe, support them, let them support you. Chen talked about the future, about continuing to push boundaries, to challenge assumptions, to demand equality not as a favor but as a right. The progress we've made isn't enough. It's never enough until every qualified person, regardless of gender, has equal opportunity to serve in any capacity they're capable of. Keep pushing. Finally, it was Maya's turn. She stood, looking out at the sea of faces, young and old, military and civilian, all connected by this conversation, this moment. 3 weeks ago, she began, a stranger ripped a patch off my clothing and called me a liar. She didn't believe I was a SEAL, didn't believe women could do what I'd done. And for a moment, I was angry. Angry at her ignorance, at the assumptions, at having to justify myself once again. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But then I realized something. Her disbelief wasn't about me. It was about the stories we tell about who gets to be a hero, who gets to be a warrior, who gets to serve at the highest levels. Those stories are changing, but not everyone has heard the new version yet. Maya looked at each of her fellow panelists. These women beside me, they're part of rewriting that story. So is every woman currently serving. So is every woman who will serve in the future. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're not requesting to be included. We're here. We've always been here. We're just making sure everyone knows it. She turned back to the audience. So to the young women out there considering service, do it. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. Because your country needs your talents, your dedication, your unique perspectives. Because the military is better, stronger, more effective when it reflects the diversity of the nation it serves. And to those who doubt, who question, who cling to old beliefs about what women can or can't do, watch. Watch as women continue to excel in every domain of warfare. Watch as we lead troops, fly missions, complete operations that were supposedly beyond our capability. Watch as we redefine what's possible. The barriers are falling. The doors are opening. The future is coming whether you're ready for it or not. She sat down to thunderous applause, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a panel discussion. It was a declaration, a line in the sand, a promise to the next generation. After the formal event ended, there was a reception. Maya found herself surrounded again, this time by aspiring service members, by veterans wanting to share their own stories, by professors and journalists and advocates. But the moment that mattered most came when young Sarah, the girl from the coffee shop, appeared with her parents. Commander Rodriguez. Sarah clutched the patch Maya had given her, now carefully framed. I came to see you. My parents drove all the way from New Jersey. Maya knelt down to Sarah's level. I'm so glad you came. What did you think of the panel? It was amazing. All those women, all the things they did. And you, Sarah's eyes were wide with admiration. You're like a superhero. Maya shook her head gently. Not a superhero. Just a person who worked really hard and never gave up. Just like you can be. Sarah's mother stepped forward. She's been talking about nothing else since she met you. She's even started researching the Naval Academy, asking what she needs to do to prepare, what grades she needs to get. You inspired her. The inspiration is already in her, Maya said, standing. I just helped her see it. As the evening wound down, Maya stepped outside for some air. The campus was beautiful in the fall, leaves turning gold and red, the air crisp and clean. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a kid in California who dreamed of doing something extraordinary, to a SEAL operator conducting missions around the world, to a veteran trying to find her place in civilian life, to this moment, standing in front of hundreds of people and sharing her truth. Chin joined her on the steps. You did good in there. Really good. We all did. That's the point, right? It's not about any one of us. It's about the collective, about showing that women's service isn't an exception or a novelty. It's just service. Speaking of which, Chin pulled out her phone, that video from the coffee shop. It's up to 15 million views. You're viral, Commander. Maya groaned. Great. That's exactly what I wanted. No, it's good. People are talking, learning, changing their minds. Margaret's campaign is getting traction. Dr. Morrison says applications from women to her military history program have tripled. That girl Jess from the coffee shop. She enlisted. Became a Navy corpsman. Maya felt a swell of pride. Really? Really? Called me asking for advice on preparing for the physical fitness test. She's crushing it, by the way. Might even go for special operations medicine down the line. Thompson emerged from the building, loosening his tie. Ladies, there's a reporter from the New York Times who wants an interview. And someone from the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office called. They're not thrilled about your unauthorized publicity stunt, but they can't deny the positive response. Maya laughed. Of course they're not thrilled. I didn't ask permission. I just did what needed to be done. Story of your career, Thompson said with a grin. Do first, apologize later. Usually works out. Usually, Maya agreed. They stood together in comfortable silence, three veterans who'd been through hell and back, who'd proven themselves in ways most people couldn't imagine, who carried scars both visible and invisible. But they also carried something else, pride, purpose, and the satisfaction of knowing they'd made a difference. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her mother, watched the live stream. So proud of you, Mija. You're changing the world. She smiled and typed back, just trying to make it a little better, Mama. One conversation at a time. As she looked up at the night sky, at the stars beginning to emerge, Maya thought about all the battles still to be fought, not with weapons, but with words, with presence, with the stubborn refusal to be erased or diminished or dismissed. The woman in the coffee shop had tried to take something from her, to strip away her identity and accomplishments. Instead, she'd inadvertently given Maya something, a platform, a voice, a chance to speak truth to ignorance. Tomorrow, Maya would continue the work. There would be more interviews, more speaking engagements, more opportunities to educate and advocate. There would be more Margarets who needed to learn, more Sarahs who needed inspiration, more Jesses who needed encouragement. But tonight, standing with her teammates under the stars, Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The mission was far from over, but this battle, the battle for recognition, for respect, for the simple acknowledgement that women warriors existed and deserved their place, this battle had been won. Not just by her, but by every woman who'd worn the uniform, who'd faced down doubt and discrimination, who'd proven through action that courage had no gender. The patch that had been torn from her shoulder was just fabric. But what it represented, her service, her sacrifice, her belonging, that could never be taken away. She was Commander Maya Rodriguez, United States Navy SEAL, retired. And she was just getting started. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.